Well, a very good afternoon. It's Thursday afternoon. You're watching the Lite Lunch. My guest today is Mark Carolan, who is going to tell us a whole range of things, but in particular, why you should be taking up smoking in 2023. So, for the next half hour, grab a cup of coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy a Lite Lunch. Welcome along to this week's Lite Lunch. My name is Rory Devon. I'm absolutely delighted that joining us today in studio we have Mark Carolan. I think probably the best thing to do, Mark, is we'll ask you to tell everyone a little bit about yourself first, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of everything we want to have a chat about. Have we lost you there, Mark?
No, I'm here.
Right, go ahead there. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself there.
Hi, Rory. It's great to be here today. Oh, there we go. Hi, Rory. It's great to be here today. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, delighted to have you. So, just give people a little bit of your background so they understand exactly what it is you do and the benefits you bring to businesses.
Absolutely. Well, look, my background is in the corporate world, Rory. So I worked in financial services for over 20 years, up until a few years ago before I shifted out of that and I moved into my coaching business. So as a coach, I work as a life coach. I work with a lot of people from a well-being perspective. I work as an executive coach. I work with helping people become better at what they do, better at themselves professionally. That's into the business coaching piece as well, how you get better at your business by becoming better at what you do yourself. And I also work as a corporate well-being coach and consultant. So I go into companies and corporations to try and build well-being and build well-being cultures within that corporation. Another aspect of my business too is I do a lot of public speaking. So I will go in and I will give talks on a variety of topics, from well-being, time management, to the power of good habits, and even as far as vulnerability for men, and which are interesting talks I always find to give in corporations. I've even actually recently did a TEDx talk up in TEDx in Downpatrick, titled "The Magic of Being Yourself," because a lot of my philosophy is the idea of the closer we get to being who we are, to understanding what we need, to understanding our values, the better we are being personally and professionally.
Right, so I think that you've covered it pretty well there, everything it is you do. So, I mean, one of the things that I know from when I was chatting with you, and one of the things that you do a huge amount of work with, is people who find time management such a challenge. Why is time management so difficult for so many people?
You know, when I think about that, I even think back to myself in the corporate world, and there'd be a course on time management, and I would say to myself, I don't have time to do that course, which is exactly the problem with our idea of time management, because we think we don't have time to do the things. And an awful lot of us, from a time management perspective, we spend our time always doing things the same way because it's what we know how to do. We know how to work hard. And that one of the problems is we know how to work hard, and we learn how to work hard, and we have this idea that the harder I work, the better off I'll be in my business. But it's not about working hard. It's about working smart. It's about doing the right things at the right time. And I think for a lot of us, it's because we don't know how to make that switch. We don't know how to change. We don't know how to step back and evaluate what we're doing and why we're doing the things we're doing in order to start trying a different method for our time management skills. Most people, and I really see this in the coaching space, where when I'm working with people from a time management perspective, they've been working off the same process for 20 years. They come in and they have their head down and they do the work until they stop working, and then they start again the next day doing exactly the same thing without taking that time to look at what's working, what's not working, how can I change things.
Yeah, and I think that's so important for so many businesses to take the time and look and see where it is and isn't going wrong. Like in that regard, though, is there something that is a quick fix, or is it something that people are so ingrained in them in relation to the bad habits they've created that to break it is a very long process?
No, I think there can be quick fixes on it. Like, okay, habits can take a bit of a while to break down because we've built up a belief structure. We've built up so much in our own heads about this is how I do, this is what I do. I'm busy, that's what I am. I was only thinking about that before we dialed in. I was driving back from the gym this morning. I was thinking, when you meet someone, they always say, "Oh, I'm always busy." What they're saying really is, "I'm someone who always has to be busy, or always thinks that they're busy." You don't allow yourself anything else. But it's a matter of, and this is one of the tools I love. And I wish I had a lot of these tools when I was working in the corporate world myself, because they're so beneficial. Is a simple thing like a time matrix. It's also called an Eisenhower box. And it's a very simple and not complicated thing where you will break down your tasks into what is urgent and important, what is urgent but not urgent but important, and then it's not urgent or not urgent and not important, and then not urgent or not important at all. And so you start looking at what's the priorities, because what we do from a time management perspective is we do the things that we like to do. We do the things that we know we can do, and we dodge the things that are important and that are hard work. What's the actual priority? If you actually break down your day, what you're actually doing is you're creating a list of the things you have to do that are necessary. These are the crises. This is the house is on fire. You ring the fire brigade. This is the stuff that has to happen. But then there's things is decide, and that's the strategy part. That's the things that need to happen, and you need to build up and you need to plan a time for them. And then there's the third piece, which is the delegate. The delegate stuff is very important. And I think this is a thing, if you're talking about what business owners can do right now straight away, is learn how to delegate. And that delegation, if you're working on your own, can be to yourself in the future. But an awful lot of business owners I find, and this is from experience working with people, they can't delegate because they don't trust the people to get it right. They don't trust them to do the things the way they would do them. You have to, because you can't do everything yourself. And delegation is a huge skill in what you do. And then there's also the delete part of the stuff that we do that we don't need to do. And we still spend our time doing it, wasting time, maybe you're on personal phone calls during the day, all simple things. Your phone is on and every notification goes off, you pick it up, and you're wasting an awful lot of time in your day doing these kind of things. Yeah. So it's an easy way to look at it. And it's once you sit down, you actually look at your day. And I was only doing a course on time management yesterday with a load of different businesses. And I got people to give me feedback. I gave them 5 minutes to do a quick example of this. And they were able to start going, oh my God, I see that this is the important task. And I'm not doing it. Why am I not doing this? This is my focus. This is where I need to be focused. So it really gets your focus into the right place.
Absolutely. And of course, talking about things that are very important, we'll just have a quick word about this. Things are hot and heavy for the Micro Business Awards at the moment. The finalist submissions are coming in and will be going off to the judges in the next few weeks. So there's all that to look forward to. But the People's Choice Award is still open to enter, and if anyone would like to enter that, you can visit irishmicrobusinessawards.ie/enter and you can nominate your business there. The last time I looked, it was 11 o'clock this morning, and there was a total of 29 votes between the top 7 in the voting for People's Choice, so it's certainly going to be very, very closely run, and that's going to run right across the summer. And of course, anyone that would like to come along to the awards, tickets are currently available. You just need to email us at microbusinessawards@gmail.com, and with the subject tickets, telling us how many you want. An invoice will be issued out to you that has the payment link on it. You click the link, you make the payment, and your tickets will be ready at the door the night of the awards. And this year we have some lovely prizes also for people attending, separate to the lovely trophies, etc., that we're going to have for all the winners. We will also have an announcement in the next couple of weeks. We just need to finalise the details on it. It now looks like there will be an additional prize for all the winners, but more about that in the weeks to come. So now we'll get back to having a chat with Mark. identify who has actually just sent a message there to say hi, Mark. So you're certainly popular. I know certainly around LinkedIn you're popular anyway, with some of the tales you have to tell, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So there was one recently, and I have to admit, when I made mention of this on the post, I've had quite a number of messages telling me how irresponsible we are, etc., etc. So you know where we're going with this.
Of course.
You recently wrote a post on LinkedIn telling people that it's 2023 and they need to take up smoking.
I did indeed. Now, Rory, I think, and I got a few messages myself that were sharp, to put it mildly, but I think that was the usual. People tend to read a headline and then don't read the actual story, you know. It was a very tongue-in-cheek comment. But what I was actually talking about was, you know, what people who were smoking, and as an ex-smoker from many years ago myself, like one of the things about smoking was the fact that you were sitting and you were doing work, and what you would do is you would get up, you would walk out of the building or your office, wherever you were, you'd go outside for 5 or 10 minutes, you'd take a break, you'd come back in, and you'd settle back into your work. But we have a tendency to sit and to work and to work and to work and to just keep going and keep going and keep going without taking that break. And our body and our mind needs a break and needs to reset. And what I was really advocating for was taking a break every hour or two. Just get up, take 5 minutes, go outside, take in, especially on a beautiful day like we have today, go outside, take a couple of breaths of air and come back in. The benefit of taking a short break in what you're doing is immeasurable. And even if you're someone who feels you're so busy, I don't have time to take a break, be amazed when you start implementing it at how it resets you all the time. It means that you come with a fresh mind to stuff and you can reset and start doing things that you need to do. So no, I'm not advocating for starting smoking, but I'm advocating for people taking a break during their busy days.
Absolutely. Well, again, as a smoker, I will tell you, you are 100% correct. Get that couple of minutes just to reset. And I probably stretch it a little bit, because a lot of the time when I'm going out to have a cigarette, I stick the kettle on as well and make a cup of coffee to have with it. So, and it does make a huge difference. Like through my day job with accountancy, as you know, having worked in finance, when you're working with figures, you need to do that step away at times, and it can all make so much more sense when you sit down to actually look at it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think there's you know, our brains are built to work to a certain level. Like when we talk about time management, there's a very famous time management technique called the Pomodoro technique. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, where
Yes.
you actually settle and you work for 25 minutes and you take a break for 3 or 4 minutes and you do it again for 25 minutes. And you do that 4 times before you take a break for half an hour. And that's done on scientific research where people studied how long the brain is best at active for, to give us those periods of working. But this tendency to put the head down and just work consistently for hours and hours and hours on end, that's where we make the mistakes, because we don't get a chance to take a wider viewpoint to see what's actually gone wrong. So it's not a rocket science thing to do, but again, our culture of being busy, I don't have time for a break.
Yeah, no, absolutely understand that. And there's another one, I'm not sure what it's called. I've heard talk of it, where you actually assign tasks to 7 to 10 minutes, and it's
okay.
7-10 minutes, walk away for 2. 7-10 minutes, walk away for 2.
Okay, that's an interest. That's been interesting. I do like one that's time blocking, which is where you actually schedule in. And this is because an awful lot of us are very busy because we spend our time on the phone or answering emails and doing those kind of things. And that's not always productive work. In fact, that sits down, as we were talking earlier, in the delegate kind of piece, a lot of that, you know. And it's actually time blocking. So I will only look at emails between 11 and 12, and then again at 4 to 5 towards the end of the day. And that's it. You actually close down your email. You don't allow yourself to look at it. If it's a crisis, that phone's going to ring and you're going to get that phone call. But otherwise, it allows you then to focus on these other pieces and do some of the strategy work. Instead of this consistent working in your business, you're actually working on your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you get that work-life balance right while protecting your mental health as well?
I actually give a talk titled Time Management and the Myth of Work-Life Balance, Rory. And you know, because people will say about work-life balance, or I have it, or no, work-life balance doesn't exist, it's not possible. What I've begun to realize, and this is from lived experience of how I used to work and how I always put myself into work, was that work-life balance is the question of identity. It's a question of what we think about ourselves. If you identify as someone who is always working hard and is fully focused on the business all the time, then what are you going to be? You're going to always work hard and be fully focused on the business. We've all worked in places where, let's say, someone who was into surfing or something unusual. On a Friday evening at 5 o'clock, you were guaranteed 100%, or even earlier. They were gone in their car down to where they could catch the surfs and the waves because they identified as a surfer and that was a priority. People will say, "Oh, family is my number one value in life," but then I'll work 12 or 14 hours a day. You can argue you're working for your family, but you're missing your family at the same time. So it's a question of what do you identify as? Do you identify as someone who works all the time, or do you identify as someone who actually cares about all these other things? So we need to examine those thoughts in our head, those beliefs about ourselves, and there's where we find our work-life balance through how we identify.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, as you know, every guest who comes on the show is asked about their favourite light bite lunch.
Yes,
now,
indeed.
Over the time we've done the show, we have had suggestions of everything from the full works, the bacon, cabbage, and they like to have their main meal in the middle of the day. We've had the soup and the ham and cheese toasty. So for you, what's the ideal grab and go for you for a light bite lunch?
Well, I would love to say, I tend to eat reasonably healthy, and I talk a lot about well-being. So and nutrition and food is a big part of that. So, my usual lunch and my lunch today already was a hummus wrap, with a lot of vegetables in it. But what I actually love, and this is something I've been having for a while, is I have a lovely sandwich once a week usually. That is actually, it's probably not the healthiest thing, but it's turkey rashers with some black pudding and coleslaw and some red onion and tomato and spinach on fresh brown bread, and it is absolutely delicious. Absolutely delicious.
I absolutely, I could totally get that. So tell me, how I'm trying to think the best way. How can improving myself improve my business?
Oh, that's a great question, Rory. If we stagnate as a person, our business is going to stagnate with it. Our whole life is about change, and what's very interesting is we fight against change an awful lot because we're not willing to accept it. We're not willing to accept the need of it. But a lot of the reasons why we have problems, we're talking about work-life balance there, how we identify as things. We're talking about time management, how we continue to do the things we've always done because this is what we know how to do. And I would even go as far as to say busyness and being busy is actually a coping mechanism. We like to keep ourselves busy, and we come from a generation where our parents would have said, "Oh, you're busy, that's good." We like to keep ourselves busy as a distraction from whatever else is going on in our life, whatever else is going on in ourselves, physically, mentally, personally, in our relationships. I'm working with two different people at the moment, and both of them started working with me because they realized the efforts they were putting into their work and what they were doing around their work, their relationships were falling apart with their partners. And they were like, "Well, how do I get this back?" And it's about their own personal change. So when you ignore all these other problems in your life to just focus on your business, these problems are still going to be there, and they're going to gradually get worse. So you need to start working on these. And if you think of like this, I think from a holistic perspective, this is how we perform at our best. If your relationships are in a good place, if your health is in a good place, then your work can be in a good place. If all of these are completely out of kilter, but your business is going well, eventually there's going to be a crash in what you do. So there's a real need to have a balance across the parts of our life. And that's what work-life balance is. Work-life balance, the truth of work-life balance is you have your work and your life working well, so they work together for you, as opposed to one is here and the other is here, or vice versa, and they both cause problems.
Yeah. Absolutely. So how do you fix issues arising for people who don't know what their issue is?
Yes, that's a lovely question. And I'll give you a perfect example. So I had a girl who started working with me a few weeks ago, and she contacted me about coaching because she didn't know what her issue was in her business. She actually said, like, "Oh, I've started this new business and I don't know what's going on. I don't know what my issue is." And she had a previous business that she'd sold on. And what it turned out was she didn't know because she was so overwhelmed with everything that was going on. She was stuck in the middle of trying to do everything, trying to focus on this, trying to make sure that everything was happening at the same time. And because of that, she just became overwhelmed because too much was happening. Everything was new and she wasn't able to cope with it. And she wasn't working on any strategy. He wasn't breaking it down. So we talked about it. We talked about, well, what's the reason why you're having these issues? Oh, I've got 2 or 3 people working for me in the US. They're not doing what I need them to be doing. Why are they not doing what they need to be doing? Well, I suppose I'm not communicating with them properly. I'm not giving them clear instructions to what has to happen. I'm not actually setting the groundwork and setting the boundaries. And like, so we know there's problems, but because we haven't taken the time to step back and examine them, we can't see what the problems are. And my process is always, and my idea is, you don't look at the problems. If you continue to look at the problems, all you do is get more stressed, you get more overwhelmed. You have to look at what's the problem, so therefore what's the solution to this problem? And let's focus on the solution, because when we focus on the solution, then we can find it, instead of being focused on the problem all the time. And it's all about awareness, Murray. It's all about awareness. Like you work in the accountancy space. If somebody comes to you with their accounts and they tell you they're making a fortune, and you take a look at the books, and your job is to raise their awareness to say, you're not making a fortune. Look at what's going on here. Look at these expenditures. Awareness. And until they come to you, they haven't looked at the books, they don't know. So it's all about raising that awareness of where you are, why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, you can't change it. So once you become aware of it, then you can work on it.
That's it. Now, a common theme among life coaches and corporate coaches, etc., in particular for micro businesses, is they feel they can't afford the support. And it's not just on a financial basis, but they can't afford to take the time to step away from their business. So it's affording both in time and in financially. What would your answer be to somebody that has been put in touch with you and you're saying to them, well, look, we're going to need to do a number of sessions to get to the root of the problem, to fix the problem. So isn't going to be, let's go and have a cup of coffee for 20 minutes and there you go, all your problems are solved. And they're saying, I can't devote that cost to it. What would you say to them then?
There's a number of different things that I'd like to talk about. I mentioned earlier on, me being offered a time management course when I was working, and I said, no, I don't have the time for that, which is the exact irony of what the problem is. If you don't look for the solutions, then the problems are going to get worse because they don't solve themselves. No problem fixes itself. And if you've got a problem with how you're running your business and your business is failing because of it, if you don't then work, you won't have a business. A very simple way to put it too is, I look at this from a health perspective too. If you don't make time for your health, then you've got to make time for your illness. So you have to make these things happen if you need to make it to happen. Like business owners in particular, I've worked with a few guys, MD of a company, a couple of CEOs, and these guys in particular, these guys had issues with burnout. And one of them found himself sitting in his car in tears. Didn't know why, because he was completely burnt out. He actually ended up having to take a few months out of work. And now when you're running a company on your own and having to take a few months out, that's a serious problem. But that was because he had the problems coming and he never dealt with them at all. And eventually he found himself to burnout. Another guy that I was working with, and he said something, we were talking, and he was talking about how he was unmotivated and he was struggling to get out of bed and he had no time and he was always ratty at home and no time to do anything that he liked to do. And I suggested to him, maybe there's a bit of burnout creeping in here. And his response was, I don't have time to be burnt out. Now, straight away, we're in real trouble here with a statement like that. And, but the thing is, we've this idea that to deal with that problem is, I'm going to have to quit everything and do everything. No, it's about putting in the small things. Taking up smoking, simply taking the break, giving yourself a few minutes here and there, do 1 or 2 little things, try and take a weekend off so that you can actually reset yourself, get your energy levels back a bit. Meet your friends, do something that refreshes you and rejuvenates you. Find these little things. Because, to your question, if somebody says, well, I can't afford to be getting involved in this, well, can you afford your business to fail? That's the other option. If you don't look for the solution, then you're going to be consistently looking at the problem. And that's not where you want to go.
Absolutely. So tell me, what's next for you? You've done the TEDx. I mean, is there going to be a book? Is there going to be...
I'd say
have you any courses?
I'd say, yeah. Well, actually, in terms of courses, yeah, I'd say there will be a book, Rory, because it's something I've always wanted to do, and I'm just trying to finalize where I go with that at the moment. The TEDx for me was great. It was a great opportunity, great to actually put myself out there, great to be on that stage, on that red dot, and it was kind of a validation of the journey I've been on over the last few years to kind of move from corporate world into the space that I'm in at the moment as well. For myself, we do have a course. I'm going to be running my own Coming Home to Yourself course probably later in the year. And I'm also running a course which is very applicable to businesses and individuals as well. It's 6 weeks to success. I'm running it with a UK coach called Chris Hunt. We're running it at the moment in companies in Ireland, but we're running it for a select few companies. We're going to advertise it more broadly towards the end of the year. And it's very much about individually for people from the COO down to the entry level in the company to come in and be given the tools and the awareness to drive themselves on into who they want to be over the next few years. And so there's some of my plans. I'm continuing to work with people on a one-to-one basis and do a bit of group coaching. And I'm continuing to love what I'm doing, Rory. It's a very interesting thing. I love meeting people, especially people who are trying to drive on and make changes.
I just see Maggie Gary there saying she'd love to see that book on the bookshelf. So the challenge has been laid down now.
Well, I've put it out publicly, Rory, so I can't run away from the idea anymore.
Well, that's exactly it. Well, we have put up your website scrolling across the bottom there, markcarolancoaching.com, because time has really caught up on us.
Oh, okay.
So if anyone is looking to get in touch with you, Mark, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Yeah, Rory, so they will find me on markcarolancoaching.com, obviously is my website. You'll find me on LinkedIn at Mark Carolan Coaching, and you'll find me on Facebook at Mark Carolan Coaching, and Instagram too at Mark Carolan Coaching, and even very sporadically on TikTok as Mark Carolan Coaching, but not as much as the rest of them.
That's great. Well, listen, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time when our guest will be the absolute powerhouse in terms of small business supporter, author, and chairman of the Organisation for Responsible Businesses. Jill Poet will be joining us from the UK. So until then, we will bid you all a very good afternoon, and we'll see you then.